guys, my name is Trinity, and if you're here to talk about books because that's the only reason I'm here, is to talk to you guys about some books. In today's video, I am going to be talking to you guys about some recommendations. Yay, my first recommendations video. So I have a few buzzwords that come up whenever I start looking for books, and I have noticed that these are books that a lot of people start looking for and then don't get recommendations for them because they are very specific or outside of the realm of what most people think of whenever they go for a fantasy novel. And yes, most of these are going to be fantasy, so I apologize if you're not a fantasy lover. The first one that I want to talk about is Norse mythology. As you guys know, last year I participated in Norse-vember, so the Danes, they are a favorite of mine. I like me some Viking stories. I love Norse mythology. I love Odin, Thor, Loki, all of that stuff. And I do have a tendency to glom onto Norse mythology when I can get a hold of it and when I can find it because, you know, there's just not a whole lot out there. There is more than a lot of people think. But I am going to talk about 4 books that I'm going to recommend to you. And 3 of them I have read. 1 of them is on my TBR. So the first one would be The Witch's Heart by Genevieve Gornichek. And oh my gosh, guys, I absolutely loved this book. Now, I have talked about this book on my channel before, but I want to go ahead and talk about it a little bit more for those who didn't watch my wrap-up that had this book in it. And I want to throw out that this book does have a very, very strong start, but it does have a very slow middle. Now, there is nothing wrong with the slow middle because it is a little domestic. That is why it gets slow. But we are talking about Angrboda and her story and her falling in love with Loki. So it's going to have a natural slowdown in the middle, but don't worry, picks up in the end, finishes great. And I loved this book so much. It is very folklore-esque in the way that it is told, and I cannot say enough good things about this book, and I'm so glad that Norse-vember launched this book into the hands of so many people because I see it all over Twitter. But I really, really think that if you love Norse mythology, you're gonna love this book because it is also told like a Norse myth itself. And Genevieve ties all of these Norse myths and legends that we know and love into Angrboda's story and makes it her own. And it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And I totally think that if you are a fan of Norse mythology, you will enjoy this one. All right, my second recommendation in the Norse realm would be Northern Wrath by Thild Holt, and I really hope I said that name right. But this book reads like a historical fiction with magical elements. And I did find the pacing of this book on the slow side, but it does have a very good build-up. And I think that if you are a reader who really likes having that build-up in your stories and seeing where everything starts out, having all of the characters come to the forefront of your stories, you're really gonna like this one. And all of the tie-ins are beautifully done. And this is Danish, just on an epic scale. And the whole Viking element of the story is there. The whole Norse mythology element of the story is there. And I really think that the tie-in to the undead is, or to the dead, I'm going to say undead, is really, really captivating and interesting. Now, I did give this book a little bit of a lower rating, but that is personal taste. And my personal taste, I don't like slow moving books. And this book does move slow. So take that for what it is, but I highly recommend this book. Now, for a book that I recently read and loved so much, H.M. Long's Hall of Smoke. Now, you're not going to get the Norse tie-ins exactly, but this is a very, very Viking-esque type story. And while there is no Danish, there is no Norse mentions in this book, you can see how the Norse myths and legends really, really prompted the writing of this story. Really inspired H.M. Long. I think Hannah did a very, very, very good job of taking those myths and legends and making them her own. And I really loved the interplay between the gods and the people of this book, because so often we get where the gods are kind of in the distance, not present. And Northern Wrath also has this element to it too. But this one, the gods are there. They are very active, very present in this world. And I adored it so much. So much. And I really recommend this to anyone who really wants that the gods are among us type of story, because it's really, really, really good. Now, for the one that I haven't read yet, but I really think I'm going to love, is Truth and Other Lies by Lyra Wolf. And I won this book in a Norse-Vember challenge, and I have heard very, very good things about people who have had the arcs for this book. And I think it's going to envelop all of the things that I love about Loki, because it sounds like it is. And if you guys don't know, I absolutely adore Loki. Do I think that he is a character that many people misinterpret? No, I actually think that he is a very morally gray character, and I love that. Love it, love it, love it. If you can't tell by what I actually read, morally gray is my thing. But I do think I'm going to enjoy this book, and I'm going to go ahead and recommend it to anybody looking for a tale of Norse mythology. Now, for the second buzzword that I'm going to tackle, Greek mythology. Now, I could definitely insert Percy Jackson here, but I'm trying to give a little bit more adult recommendations than, ones that cross the spectrum. But Percy Jackson is a good starting point if you haven't read anything about the gods. There's also a Norse telling from Rick Riordan. So you can start there if you would like. If you are a young adult reader, then I highly recommend starting there. But I'm going to go first with a book that I have yet to read, but have heard so many good things about, and that would be Circe by Madeline Miller. Now, I have heard that Madeline Miller is very character focused and very atmospheric, and we all know that Circe is a character from Greek mythology, and if you don't know Circe's story, I would highly recommend looking into it, because I don't want to bog this video down with an explanation of who Circe is. But I really think that this is a book that I'm going to enjoy, and Song of Achilles could also go in here. I think that these books are going to be two books that I love in the Greek mythology realm. And one that is a little bit outside of fantasy, but not quite. We're going to go with a fantasy romance series. And that would be the Goddess Summoning series by PC Cast. Now, a lot of these books are retellings. So you are getting the Little Mermaid story, you are getting Beauty and the Beast, but you're also getting Greek gods and goddesses. So I really love the tie-ins in all of these books. I think that she does an excellent job. Now, they are very steamy. So if you don't like sex in your books, I don't recommend these books because you're going to get in-your-face sex scenes. But if you do, if you like the steaminess, I would recommend the Goddess series by PC Cast. So the next recommendation I am going to throw out there is a women's fiction. Oh, I can't think of the name of the award. I was almost there. The Women's Prize for Fiction nominee, and that would be 1,000 Ships by Natalie Haynes. Again, this is a book that I am excited to read and have not yet got to, but because it's won awards and so many people are already talking this book up, I really think it's going to be a book that I enjoy and you might possibly enjoy. And if you're looking for a new twist on Greek mythology, Greek history, this is just another one to throw into the bucket and say, have a go. And then I am going to throw a young adult in here because I've heard nothing but great things about it. I'm excited to read it myself, and that would be Lore by Alexandra Bracken. And the cover of this book is just... And Medusa? Can we talk about the fact that there's going to be a book addressing Medusa? I am very, very excited about that as well. Now, one classic that I can also throw out there is Clash of the Titans. If you guys haven't read that, by Alan Dean Foster. This is kind of the epitome of Greek mythology. Okay, and the next buzzword that I am going to be talking about is Camelot. And while I have read many, many Camelot retellings, I am going to talk about some that I'm excited to get to and some that I have loved in the past. So, as you guys know, Stephen R. Lawhead is a very, very dear author to me, and he has a Camelot retelling. This is the first book of the Pendragon cycle, and if you guys are familiar with Arthurian legend, you know Arthur is a Pendragon. And I loved the first book in this series, but I have not moved on to the other ones, so don't judge me. But I do love Stephen R. Lawhead, and I do think that anything he writes is... He also has a Norse standalone called Byzantium, and that one's good too. But we're here talking about Arthur now, and Taliesin is a book that I really loved, and I do need to finish the rest of the Pendragon cycle, but I really would recommend it if you're looking for another really great Arthur retelling. And Stephen R. Lawhead is pretty consistent in taking people from stories that I already love and recreating them, making them his own, and they are always so brilliant, and I highly recommend it. Now, we also have Rosalind Mills, and this is her Guinevere series, and these read more like historical fiction than they do a fantasy retelling. But I really enjoyed these books when I read them. Now, it was a long time ago that I read them, but from what I remember, they're from Guinevere's perspective instead of Arthur's, so that does give a new spin to the tale anyway. And I just think that these books are very beautifully written, and anybody who likes historical fiction that has great prose, go ahead and pick these up and then enjoy the fact that they're based in Arthurian legend. Now, one that gets recommended to me all the time, I have it, it's over there. I just haven't started it yet, and I was going to start it this month. I was going to say, you know, forget my TBR, I'm gonna read this book, and that would be The Lost Queen by Signe Pike. And Elle has talked about this on her channel. I've seen a couple of booktubers recently talking about this series on their channels. Now, I've had this book on my TBR for years, but I never came across it at a Barnes & Noble, and lo and behold, I came across it at a discount store for about $3. So excited, picked it up, and then forgot about it. Because, you know, I have so many books on my shelves that I haven't read yet, which is a shame. But it's here. I'm very excited to get to it. And won't you guys join me in reading it? And last but not least, Giles Christian. He is an author that I've read before and an author that I read in Northvember. So you might see some ties to other things in this list, but I did read Blood Eye by Giles Christian for Northvember, and then Elle started talking about Lancelot, which I didn't even know existed. But one thing that I can say about Giles Christian is he writes very gritty, in-your-face stories, and when you're starting out with Lancelot and the writing that I know from him, I'm very, very excited to see where this goes, because I've read the Norse Giles Christian. Now I would love to read the Camelot Giles Christian and see if I enjoy it as much as I did what I read for Northvember. Now, backing away from the hardcore buzzwords, I am going to go with a more loose buzzword for me, and that is folklore. I really, really like fairy tales. I really like fairy tale retellings. I love books that are based in folklore, and I'm going to actually talk to you about books that I'm excited to get to in the folklore realm. These are books that I haven't read yet, but I'm going to recommend them to you based on what I have heard about them. These are books that have been recommended to me in the past and books that I'm excited to get to. So the first in the folklore that I am very excited to get to would be The Bear and the Nightingale. Now, this is not a book that appeals to me on every level. This is actually a book that I was scared to read until a friend of mine read it who has very similar taste to me. And when I say very similar, I mean like 99.9%. And when she decided to do a review and read it and gave it 5 stars, I was like, oh. So I will be picking up The Bear and the Nightingale very soon. Very excited to get to it. It is based in Russian folklore, and I do know that we are dealing with spirits, so that's very cool. And I think that as the story progresses, demons as well. So very, very intrigued by that. Now, I know that this is a very well-loved trilogy, so if I don't love it, I don't. But since it is getting so popular, and since I am hearing that it is great from people that I do trust, I'm going to be picking it up too. All right, the next one is going to be Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. Now, I liked Uprooted. It was okay. It was a book that I don't think is forgettable because the setting was not forgettable. The writing was a little forgettable, and the characters were a little forgettable, but the wood was not forgettable. It was one of those things that I was highly intrigued by, and when you have a creepy forest, that is a setting that I can get on board with, even though I am not a setting-driven reader. I do really, really enjoy books that have a great setting, and Creepy Woods is one of those. So Spinning Silver is not a take on any particular myth or legend, but it is written in the style of myths and legends and folklore. And so I'm very, very intrigued to see what she does with it. I have heard nothing but rave reviews for Spinning Silver, and it's one of those that always kind of falls off the radar for me until someone talks about it. And then I'm like, oh yeah, that book. So it is one that I do hope to get my hands on in the near future. I don't know when I will be able to read it. Tamara is going to be a book or a series that's coming up for me. So it might be a little bit before I get to Spinning Silver, but I'm going to go ahead and throw it out as a recommendation because this book has been recommended to me from so many people. The next one that I have for you is Gods of Jade and Shadow by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. And this is based in Mexican folklore. And it is about a girl who makes a pact with death. And I'm very, very excited to get to this. I adored Mexican Gothic, and so I'm very excited to read something else written by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. I just hope that it is a book that I will love. And then we have the 12 Dancing Princesses retelling, and that would be the House of Salt and Sorrows. And I'm going to be completely honest with you and tell you, I have never seen a young adult reader review this book. It has always been adult fantasy readers who like this book. And it is young adult, but I'm saying that because even though it's young adult, I have never seen a young adult reviewer review it. I've only seen adult fantasy reviewers who liked this book and reviewed it. So that speaks volumes to me about how this book is written. And that also makes me highly, highly intrigued to pick it up and see what all the fuss is about. But it is based on the 12 Dancing Princesses, and if you know that tale, then I highly recommend you pick up the book, even if you don't know the tale. Like I said, adult fantasy readers love this book, so I'm recommending it based on that. Okay, and now I want to talk about a book that I got an ARC for, and I'm so excited to read, and that would be Folklore by Angela Mi Young-her. And it's based in Korean mythology, and I've never read anything based in Korean mythology. So I'm very, very excited to get this one going. It'll be a little bit before I can get to it, but I just want to throw it out there because it sounds so good. And the tagline says, a genre-defying, continent-spanning saga of Korean myth, scientific discovery, and the abiding love that binds even the most broken of families. So I know that this is going to be based in a contemporary setting. That does throw me a little bit, but whenever I was looking at the synopsis for it on NetGalley, it just sounded like it was going to be very gripping, very emotional, and I do like books like that sometimes. So I think that this is going to be hit or miss for me, but I want to throw it out there so that you guys all know that there is a book out there based in Korean mythology, and if that's something that interests you, pick up Folklore. It comes out April 27th, so let's see if we like this one too. All right, that is it for this video. Like, subscribe, do all the fun things, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!